Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Trading with Italy. My name's Stephanie Bowes, and I'm the International Business Manager here at the Greater Birmingham Chambers of Commerce. And we're delighted to bring you this event today, which is part of a series of events looking at Brexit and trading with our European partners and how it can help you as a business if you're looking to trade within some of these European markets. We've teamed up with some of our regional chambers, so Coventry and Warwickshire, the Black Country Chambers of Commerce, and of course the support from the West Midlands Combined Authority. So I'm really delighted to be joined by a great panel today. Obviously our friends across the pond over in Italy, the British Chamber of Commerce Italy, Secretary General and CEO Aaron Pugliese. We also have Stephen Sprague, who is the chairman of the British Chambers of Commerce Italy and the Brexit Committee and councillor. And we also have Joseph De Mayo, who is from the STI Internazionale. So Joseph is going to be giving you a real good insight into some of the kind of case studies and clients that he's been working with who have been trading with Italy or looking to trade with Italy. And then we're going to kind of finish off the session with a Q&A. So if anyone has any comments, any questions, please use the chat box or the Q&A box below. And also if you have any technical difficulties today, Grace, my colleague, is in the background and she'll be able to support you with any issues. So we're going to kick off and sorry, just before we do have some upcoming training courses over the next couple of months. So anyone that is looking to understand a bit more about export documentation, customs procedures, there is a lot of funding available, free funding available for these courses. So please do get in touch with our international training manager, Leah Quamby. Her details are on the screen, as you can see. If not, please do reach out to any staff member here at the Chamber and we'll be able to support you with that. Our next event is Trading with France, and that is also taking place on the 2nd of June. So please watch out for further details on that going forward. So without further ado, I'm now going to hand over to Aaron. Welcome, Aaron, and thank you again for supporting this event with us today.
Well, thank you, Stephanie. Thank you to Grace, and thank you also to our own Margherita Ferretti for organizing this opportunity of collaboration, of building a bridge between the UK and Italy. We hope that some of your members will decide to see us as a partner for a soft landing in approaching the Italian market. We are definitely happy to be of assistance in case of curiosity even or need once they approach the market. I will take very few moments to say some things because I want to leave most of the time to Stephen Sprague and Joseph De Mayo, who are the main speakers in this conference. So thank you again. Couple of actually, I'm going to post my outline so that you know what I'll speak about. First of all, the Chamber, we are a private-based, non-government funded chamber, although we have a very good relationship with the Embassy and the Consulate and Department of International Trade here in Italy. We work very closely and happy about that. We also have strong links with a number of associations and partner networks that operate in different sectors. So when we are doing something specifically in one sector or with a group of people, HR directors or CFOs, we can extend into their networks and collaborate very effectively. Our membership ranges from the big multinationals such as Aviva, Barclays, Jaguar, Lloyds, and so forth, but also medium and small size companies. And of course, we have some really very well-known and reliable experts on topics of trade, tax and legal matters, Brexit related or not. In terms of Italy, there are just a few facts and figures that you might or might not be familiar with. Our population is 60 million, so 6 million less than France and 13 more than Spain. Contrary to the UK, our political capital is Rome, and our economic capital is in Milan, where the chamber is located. And the connection between the two main cities is a 3-hour fast train ride that costs about £100 round trip. So if you're moving around in Italy, that might be helpful. We have 20 regions, although the amount of freedom and devolution of power to the region is quite limited. Typically, health, school, and some other topics, recycling, for example. Overall, though, we are one nation with one language, with a very, very homogeneous population, much more than the UK. And that is important when doing business, because even though people are very locally enthusiastic about their cities, their culture, it is one unified nation. Business size, the presence of large companies is less than in other European countries, although we have very large companies like Eni or Enel in energy, or Leonardo in defense, or Luxottica in glasses, and so forth. But less franchising and less multinationals than other European countries. In terms of import and export, funny enough, the sectors are pretty much the same. We import and we export in the same sectors: automotive, mechanical parts and machinery, the pharmaceuticals, which the UK is a huge partner of ours in that as well, and also fashion and luxury goods. In terms of political stability, if you read the news, you will see that we're constantly changing government. That is very true, and it is a bit of an issue. However, the variance of political parties and alternation does not impact enormously in the overall political situation in Italy, as I was mentioning privately earlier to the chamber representatives. Unlike South America, where you might go from a nationalist far-right leader to a communist from one year to the next, in Italy, it's always more or less the same thing, even though the parties change. So there is a stability, if you will. In the last 70 years, it's been really quite stable. In terms of food, you should know that the best pizza is definitely in Naples, and the best ragu sauce is in Bologna, and the best Parmesan cheese is in Reggio Emilia, where my colleague Margherita is from. Last three things about culture instead. We are a Mediterranean country, Mediterranean culture. So unlike the Anglo-Saxons, we have some paradigm differences. One of them is that we are not always saying exactly what we mean. So there is an official message and an effective reality, and this is quite confusing for especially at the beginning, and it obviously has some negative impact, but it also has some positive impact if you understand and use it correctly. What I mean is, you might ask your supplier what their policy is on payment, and they might tell you, oh, it's upon order. that is their policy. And then you might pay them right away because that's their policy. So that's what you expect. But you can actually ask them, is it okay if I pay you in 90 days? And they might be like, yeah, that's fine. Yeah. So what is it? You know, you shouldn't stop at the official communication, but also go into effectively, can we do it like this? Is that okay? And people are quite accommodating. In terms of friendliness towards foreigners, Italians love foreigners, and British and American are way at the top of our list of our favorite people and favorite countries. So you will be very welcome, Brexit or no Brexit. And last, trust. Italian business is done on trust a lot more than on data. So your certifications will be important and maybe even required. However, you will not get as much mileage on certification and data sheets as much as you will have from personal relationships and people that will intervene and say, I know these people, I know their product, I know the reliability, I recommend them. So keep that in mind in the way you set up business. So that's all for me. If you have any questions, please write them in the chat or in the Q&A. And if we can't address them right away, we'll be happy to follow up via email. So do send us as many questions as you have, both general and specific to any one of us. Thank you. Should I go on and introduce Stephen Sprague then? Okay. Stephen Sprague is a councillor at the Chamber. He has also been the chair of our Brexit committee, made up of many very high-profile experts in different fields. And he has also recently been elected to be our incoming president in June. So if you come and visit us, Stephen will be happy to welcome you. And I'll leave it to him to give you a more legal and framework aspect of Brexit and trade. Over to you, Stephen.
Thank you very much, Aaron. And good morning to everyone. I will now try and see if I can share my screen with you, which hopefully is working. I shan't do the usual. Can you see my slides? I'm assuming you can. Oh, you can also see that, which I'll get rid of. Okay, so good morning to everyone again. I will try and give you at somewhat breakneck speed a background to what's happened and what's happening. I apologize if some of the stuff you've already heard, but I think it's always useful to recap these things anyway, since it's such a huge effect on trade and business and the facility with which that's happening. So where we are, UK obviously has left the European Union. It left in January. There was a transition period which took us to the end of last year. Transition period clearly was supposed to be so everybody could get prepared for the beginning of the new relationship, is what it's becoming called. That didn't exactly work to plan. What we're seeing in the Chamber is a lot of people were unable to, or just didn't get round to preparing enough in advance for the end of the transition period. So of course, a lot of the things that have changed came as, if not a surprise, certainly as a challenge, some of which is being dealt with, some of which a little less so. We have the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, which was agreed on Christmas Eve. It's now been ratified both in the UK and by the European Parliament. So at least for the next 5 years, we know how things are supposed to work. Unfortunately, the caveat is it's a 1,400-page document. It's incredibly difficult to read. It's incredibly difficult to understand unless you're used to it. And also, there are a whole series of exceptions and things at the end of it, which means that as you come into Europe from the UK, you have to then analyze what's going on in each of the various countries that you're dealing with. And of course, that is the case for Italy as well, although so far that's not been a huge issue in terms of variation. The Trade and Cooperation Agreement does what it says on the label. It's a trade and cooperation agreement. It's not a free trade agreement. It deals mainly with goods. And of course, the big threat of tariffs has largely been removed. although there is the issue of dealing with certificates of origin, which I'll deal with in a moment. There are significant non-tariff barriers, however, that I'm sure everybody is facing and is trying to overcome. The parties have set up a whole load of subgroups and social, where they're working on trying to then take forward the things they weren't able to deal with in the trade agreement themselves, and have set up observation groups where they're looking at things like environment, social criteria, employment and fiscal transparency, which of course is very important both in the UK and within the European Union. And the idea of the agreement in broad terms is that it creates these checks and balances, some of which we've already seen in terms of certain issues that have arisen. Dealing directly with Italy, I think in addition to what Aaron has said, a little anecdote in terms of political stability. When I lived in Italy, when I was much younger, Margaret Thatcher was the Prime Minister in the UK. Margaret Thatcher got a cold and the stock market fell. Whilst I was in Italy, there were 3 months with no government and nothing happened, nothing changed, everything just carried on as normal. So it's, in that sense, it's very, very different. So Italy is the 9th biggest trading partner for the UK. As Aaron said, there is a lot of not duplication as such, but similar kinds of industries. So technology and engineering being a huge part of that, and of course, automobiles as well. It's interesting to take some trade figures. So in 2018, not in, as I've written there, 2000 or 20,108, we'd be probably somewhere in space at that point. There was a trade exchange between the UK and Italy of 45 billion pounds. And that's split pretty much 50-50 in terms of what's coming from the UK and what's going to the UK from Italy. In 2020, with the middle of lockdowns, and there's no need, I think, for anybody to start talking about why and the wherefores of the lockdown and the pandemic, that overall trade reduced by about 22.5%. So we're now looking at 35 billion. Again, it's maintained more or less parity in terms of what's coming in and what's going out. There were 14.5 billion of UK exports to Italy, 60% of which were goods. And there were 20.2 billion, excuse me, of exports from Italy to the UK. Again, a majority, in fact, in Italy is a much higher majority, so it's 83% goods. In terms of the West Midlands, almost 1 billion of the 14.5 came into Italy from the West Midlands. So you can see the West Midlands is a significant trading partner for Italy, especially when you think about the fact that of the 14.5, 40% of that is services, which are mainly coming from the sort of London area anyway. In 2019, which are the last figures I was able to find, there were 19 billion pounds worth of direct foreign investment from the UK into Italy, and 6.5 billion from Italy into the UK. Whilst I would suspect those figures will change, obviously we don't have up-to-date figures, and we certainly don't have figures for the post-transition period numbers, but I would expect those numbers to be lower when we're looking at 2021, simply because of the pandemic, simply because of the changes that have taken place. But I wouldn't expect, and I don't think anybody expects these figures to be drastically reduced within the short term anyway. So it's a very healthy and very strong relationship, and something that's very important for both Italy and of course for the UK. Moving on to the specific Brexit stuff. Again, apologies if this is going over stuff you've already dealt with, but tariffs have been largely removed, but you do have to bear in mind the rules of origin. Rules of origin in terms of tariffs and borders relate to the component part of what it is that you're trying to sell or you're importing or exporting. We have already seen issues that have been arising with members and people who've contacted the Chamber in terms of the initial, if not continuing difficulties of properly identifying from it the perspective of filling in of customs declarations and import documentation, of the percentages and the true origin of goods coming in and out. But I think that's something that over time, as you get more used to dealing with it, becomes more of a bother rather than a difficulty. The issue, of course, is the administrative costs and the time it takes to do all of this. In terms of VAT, there's been obviously huge changes in the way in which VAT is dealt with on goods coming in. You should be aware that Italian VAT generally is 22%, so it's higher than it is in the UK. Issues, again, that we've seen or I've seen have related to the fact that, of course, if you're bringing goods to Italy by road, you have an immediate customs and VAT issue as you come into European Union territory. And that's something that you need to think about, especially if you're doing distance selling and especially if you're doing online sales. A perfect example here is people who are selling clothing online and then the clothing gets returned. And there are all sorts of issues about how you deal with VAT that's already been paid at the point of entry, and the fact that in some cases, in one case of a client of mine, 60% of the goods that are coming into the European Union member states is then going back to the UK, and they're finding it very difficult to recover VAT that they've paid on the goods coming in. Customs formalities are always a bother wherever you have to deal with them, and Italy, of course, is no exception. The important thing is that whilst Italians themselves are very accommodating and very welcoming of foreigners, that's not necessarily true of the administration and the way the administration works. So you do have to think about this. You do have to prepare yourselves in advance and not assume, not that you would assume necessarily with the UK that it would be straightforward and just simply a question of going through the motions. Italian formalities are a little bit more Byzantine, and you need to deal with that. The EORI I mentioned because it works both coming into the UK and coming out, so it is something that you should be aware of and you should deal with. In terms of borders, the main thing to bear in mind is that the administrative costs have increased, will increase, and therefore there is you have to add that to your overall economic forecast, and of course time. And the issue with time is not only the time it takes to get through customs, it's also the time that sometimes when something goes wrong, that time is then exacerbated because the formalities are relatively new and are being applied. Moving on, circulation of goods. Again, issues like the country of origin. Now, so the European CE mark and the new UK CA mark. You will have to make sure that goods coming into Europe conform with the CE marks as well as the UK CA mark, because the rules in terms of the UK CA mark are only applicable to the UK. So once the moving in period is over, the UK CA mark will not be the same as the CE mark in Europe. So you will have to deal with that. For the moment, there's not a huge change in terms of standards. We have helped clients in cosmetics or in the chemicals industries dealing with changes to things like REACH and changes to things to regulation relating to European standards and the new UK standards. And again, it's a question of keeping ahead of the game and being prepared. Same, of course, works in terms of labeling, as there will be changes, and conformity. Logistics, the logistics issues are really in relation to how you get the good, how you get whatever it is you're exporting into Italy. And again, it picks up the same issues I've been talking about in terms of the borders and in terms of timing. I've mentioned Incoterms here. You should be looking at your contracts and you should be making sure that whichever Incoterm you have chosen to govern the sort of basic exchange in your contracts actually works for you. In real terms, you'd be aware that there are very few Incoterms that work in terms of dealing in advance with the customs issues from the point of view of the seller. So you have to think about whether you would risk doing Ex Works or the DPP, or whether you're going to find some kind of variation to the Incoterms you're using. But again, it's something you should be looking at and not just carrying on in terms of business that you've been doing in the past. And of course, same works for Italy as any other exchange here. I think the overall picture in terms of regulation is that most of the regulation is going to be roughly the same kind of process for most of the European Union. Where things change or where you start dealing with things like VAT and tax, where of course there is still much more local variation. Circulation of people is something that is beginning to become more and more an issue. It's been kind of dormant for a while because of the pandemic and because of the fact that you haven't been allowed to travel anyway, so it's been very difficult. But it is one of the more significant issues that has changed. So we have the citizens issues, which of course is not necessarily relevant for people watching this webinar today, but visas and work permits are, and I'll talk in a little bit about the way that works in Italy. But bear in mind that the rules have changed. There is no freedom to move around as we used to move around. And therefore you need to think about it. Driving licenses, your UK driving license may no longer be relevant and may no longer be acceptable in Italy. Therefore, you should think about trying to get yourself, if you're driving certainly in Italy, but anywhere really in the European Union, you should think about getting yourselves an international driving license. Something that used to be common. I remember buying mine when I used to travel a lot for £3 from the AA. That's not the case anymore. It's much more complicated. It's much more sophisticated now, so it takes more time to get sorted out. And then finally, the recognition of professional qualifications. This is something that has come up and keeps coming up in that unless they were already recognized, professional qualifications are no longer recognized in Italy or anywhere else in Europe in the automatic way they were in the past. Consequently, we have helped people that have issues because they have a contract to undertake certain types of work. Certain types of work require the people undertaking it to have qualifications, and those qualifications are now in doubt in terms of their acceptability and their recognition in Italy. And that is an issue that we've had to deal with for members of ours. In terms of visiting Italy generally, of course, from the 31st of December, free movement of people ended. UK citizens may visit Italy now for relatively short visa-free periods, and these include, to an extent, tourism and certain business reasons. And I'll explain in a little more detail about that in a moment. But bear in mind that there is a maximum of 90 days in any 180-day period, and the sting in the tail for this is that this applies to all of the time you have spent in any of the Schengen countries in Europe. So if you travel for business regularly and perhaps spend 2 weeks in, well, maybe not this year, but perhaps next year, you spend 2 weeks in Spain or in France or in Italy or wherever, preferably Italy, of course, from our perspective, on holiday, that the 2 weeks or 3 weeks holiday, if you're lucky, count as part of your 90 days in your 180-day period. It's not 90 days in Italy and then 90 days in France. So that's something that is very, very important. This is a difference to the way, and most of the immigration stuff is working pretty much the same, both going into and out of the UK. This is different because, of course, going into the UK, you have, first, it's a 6 months in the year, and secondly, it's only the UK. So you need to be careful of that if moving around within the European Union, certainly within the Schengen area, is part of your regular business activity. As I've said, visitors can come to Italy visa-free in most circumstances where you're looking at tourism, where you are looking at certain business activities, but these are quite limited. They are effectively the same as the ones that the UK is applying to European citizens going the other way, but they are much more restrictive than clearly than they used to be. So you can attend meetings and discussions, you can go to conferences, you can do marketing activity, you can look for prospective clients, negotiations, and importantly, you can come to Italy to install, assemble, and maintain plant or machinery that you have sold to an Italian company. And that is roughly the same as the rule that would apply to Italians coming to you. There are two issues here that need to be thought about quite seriously. The first is that so far all of the rules talk about plant, equipment, machinery that you have sold and talk about you sending your people. And it's not at all clear how that would happen if you subcontracted the assembly and maintenance of this plant. And again, these are issues that we're trying to deal with for members of ours. The other thing that has changed in terms of that is all of the rules that relate to obligations in relation to social security and national insurance contributions. The UK takes a much more relaxed view of the payment, not in terms of the payment itself, but in who is responsible for the payment of national insurance and social security. Even though in the UK that's changing with the new rules that relate to IR35. In Italy, it's much more regulated, and it's much more an issue that is having to be dealt with. And again, we've helped people who've approached us in terms of how you deal with the bureaucracy that's necessary when you're sending a team of people to undertake work, maintenance of plant assembly, etc., that is necessary to be undertaken in Italy, and you're having to go through a whole process of registering these people with the local Italian social security organizations and making sure things get paid and stuff. And this is something that Italians are very, very aware of, and especially in terms of things like construction. Moving on, I'll go with this one. This deals with actually employing people in Italy. And again, it's very similar to the UK rules. It deals with highly skilled people. It deals with limited periods and going through a very precise process. And it does not lead to rights to remain. You have to go at the end of the period. The blue card is a kind of version of the American green card. It allows you to hire locally rather than sending somebody that is already part of your employment. But again, it is a significant process and takes at least 6 to 8 months to sort out. So again, it's not something you can do overnight. I'll finish up with just a very, very quick review of the law. In terms of law and legal rules, very little has changed. The important things in terms of contract are that the rules about choice of law and jurisdiction and the resolution of disputes that were in existence have pretty much all changed. In terms of choice of law, that's still something that the EU will still recognize English, Welsh, or Scottish law. The UK will still recognize the rules under what was known as Rome 1 and 2, so Italian law would work. But again, it's something you should think about and you should be aware of. In terms of disputes, I've got a slide here which talks about the kinds of things that have changed. Just bear in mind that at the moment, the only thing that is probably the safest thing would be arbitration, because arbitration is something that applies generally outside of strict legal rules and is something that applies equally in the UK as it does in Italy. Italian courts are generally much slower than UK courts. So again, that's something to think about, but arbitration is where you should be going. I could carry on for the rest of the hour and talk about this, but I won't. I'll stop here. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you may have, and I hope some of this at least was interesting. So I'll pass back to Aaron.
Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, if you have any other questions that are more specific, our colleagues from Birmingham Chamber will send around our email address and contact details, so you can write to us directly. Now, the next speaker is Joseph Di Maio, who is the CEO of a very established import-export operator with a specialization on alcoholic beverages to and from the UK. So I'll pass over to him, who will give you some general first-hand experience of British businesses exporting to Italy before and during and after the whole Brexit situation up to today. Over to you, Joseph.
Thank you, Aaron. Good morning to everyone, and thank you all for having me today. Right, so as Aaron said, we are specialized in shipping wines and spirits to and from Italy with the UK. We've been in this trade for more than 40 years. Let's say that with Brexit now, we've gone back 28 years when we used to do customs clearances. So we're unfortunately, that's only with paperwork. We haven't gone back in age, so that's something we'll have to accept. I'd like today to share some of the experiences we've had with the first 5 months of actual Brexit, with all the pitfalls, with all the problems we have seen with customers, with these non-tariff barriers we've been talking about, which are quite how to say, they're quite challenging for many businesses. The first thing I like to say is that surprisingly, I have found that despite all the talks about Brexit that we've had in the past couple of years, very few businesses, and we deal mainly with SMEs, very few businesses were prepared to deal with Brexit. In terms of paperwork, in terms of knowledge of rules, and in terms of manpower to deal with these issues. As Stephen has said, this is quite a time-consuming experience, and this is probably something that many of us have not taken into account. Of course, exports of beers, wines and spirits from Italy to the UK are a substantial business, but in the same way, alcoholic drinks are one of the main exports for the UK to Europe and to Italy as well. We Italians, we love gin, whiskies, and your beers probably as much as you like our Prosecco. So it's more or less a balanced situation. Unfortunately, with Brexit, it has now become more difficult for importers to, especially on the European side, to import beverages or, let's say, anything food related, because of the basically the European law is treating imports from the United Kingdom as any import from any other third-party country. So from day one, we have a situation where health certificates are required, where specific labeling based on European standards are required, where a name of a European importer must be shown on the label. And of course, this has caused many businesses to either say, we're not going to buy any more from the UK, or we will have to reduce our business. The economic impact of this is quite substantial. We're talking on average about €300 extra on administration costs for every single consignment coming in, to cover for UK export clearances, a so-called T1 document in order for the goods to travel to Italy, Italian customs clearance, Italian inspection fee, and labeling issues. So this is an average we've calculated, and it's something that is not going to ease in a short period. I must say, the UK has had a different approach to this. Despite controlled goods being liable for import customs procedures from day one of Brexit, many of the controls have been postponed to 2022 anyway, and especially labeling has been postponed to October 2022. So let's say the UK is giving more time to their importers to adapt to the new regulations than what the European Union and Italy, of course, have done with imports from the UK. We're talking about these non-tariff barriers have actually an impact. In time, in preparing documents, we have found that many, talking about exports from the UK now in particular, many UK exporters, small breweries and businesses are having a hard time in dealing with preparing the paperwork, with preparing letters of instructions for customs brokers, and dealing with the whole issue of customs clearance. We, of course, have tried to help in terms of consultancy for these businesses. Actually, I must say that we spent January and February explaining procedures to businesses in Italy and in the UK on how to cope with the new procedures. But still today, I mean, many businesses are still struggling. In particular with beer imports, if you consider, we work with a few large Italian beer importers, they may have on each vehicle, let's say 4 or 5 different shipments from different breweries. They will have to pay those €300 for each individual consignment. So no matter that they're all beer consignments, for each supplier, they will need a health certificate, there will be a customs clearance. So all those costs are multiplying. You will understand that on one single trailer coming in, an importer will have to spend anything from around 1,500 to 2,000 euros only on administration costs, which he didn't have to spend last year. Besides the customs issues, there has been also a lack of haulage capacity, which I understand is continuing. And this is also sort of making trade between Italy and the UK more difficult. We have experienced also on UK domestic haulage. We use a lot of container services from Italy to UK and back, and many operators prefer not to load in the UK to come back to the European. They prefer sending the containers back empty because of they need their haulage to do local deliveries, so they need a quicker turnaround, and they don't want to get involved with customs clearance from the UK. So they can get their containers back into Europe and then reload back to the UK. Of course, the pandemic has had an effect, with restrictions being eased in Italy and in the UK more or less at the same time. There has been a spike in demand for both import and export movements, and let's say there is a combination of factors which is making the trade quite difficult. But let's say that despite the difficulties, shipments are being cleared. I mean, it's not that the business is completely blocked. Of course, businesses must account for higher costs, longer transit times, but goods are being cleared, both coming into Italy and going into the UK. So the system is working, let's say. It will need improvements down the line, but at least goods are coming through. I am, of course, talking of business to business movements, not business to consumer, which is a completely different story. And let's say the experience we see is that there is a demand for UK products, UK beer, and UK spirits. It's just a matter of, I think, businesses, getting to understand the procedures, but business can flow as before, even with more difficulties in the actual trading. So we've assisted a number of businesses in helping them understand, preparing the paperwork both on the UK side and on the Italian side, and it is at the end of the day, let's say they have found this to be beneficial. Another issue we have found in the UK that there is a lack also of UK customs brokers who specialize on wines and spirits, and that has caused a sort of cherry picking of customers. They sort of tend to choose the customers that they want, and others are just left on their own, and there is no support for them, so to say. We luckily have in place the right procedures, and we have the right agents both in Italy and in the UK to deal with these issues. So I would say, please do sell to Italy. Please do trade with Italy. It is a very good market. We like UK products, so and if need be, we're here to help.
Oh, sorry, Aaron.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. I think we covered some ground, and I see there's already a first question.
Yeah.
Which is,
I'll be happy to take any questions, of course.
Thank you. No, it was great. You know, but both Stephen and yourself, Joseph, some really good insights there. Yeah, so obviously sticking with you at the moment, and there's a question that's come in. So is this new 1,500 to 2,000 euro charge per trailer being absorbed by importers or passed on to the wholesalers' customers?
Let's say the tendency for the UK exporters is not to participate to the costs of the new procedures. So the majority will say, we are selling X works, and we don't want to know about it. So basically, it's the importer having to pay export customs formalities from the UK, pay for the T1 document, which is required to escort the goods up to the Italian customs, and then pay for the Italian customs clearance, health certificate, and everything required then by customs authorities. Of course, the 1,500 euro refers to 5 shipments on a particular trailer. It averages out to about 300 euro per shipment. And that is, be it 1 pallet of beer or be it 10 pallets of beer, it makes no difference. Plus, of course, cost of transport and distribution. But it is generally paid for by the importers based on X works Incoterms.
Brilliant. Thank you. Okay, so obviously, if anybody has any other questions, please do pop them into the chat box or the Q&A. We've got probably just under 10 minutes. I guess from hang on, I think we do have one that's come in now. Okay, so I don't know if Joseph and Stephen, you can see the message that's coming from the Q&A and which one would like to maybe answer this, but in case our other participants can't see it, but it basically says the Trade and Cooperation Agreement covers also short-term travels to Italy. The agreement covers activities that can be performed by UK nationals visa-free, for which a visa would be needed if performed by any other third country national. With that said, how enforceable is the short-term travel as part of the Trade and Cooperation Agreement into the national Italian immigration law? One for you, Stephen.
I'll answer that one. So, in general terms, as I explained, the travel between the UK and Italy should be visa-free. As I explained, there is some business activity that you can carry out, but it's very limited, and it's limited to what I would term prospecting, knowledge gathering, client recruitment, and work that's directly related to something you've already contracted to do, like assembly or maintenance. Anything else, you require a work permit for. Anything else you will require a specific visa for. And it's the same for Italians coming into the UK. And all of the procedures that you go through in order to get your work permit and your visas are part of Italian standard immigration law, just as they would be in France, just as they would be in Germany, or the other way around, a part of the new UK immigration rules. Because those rules are in the UK. There are very similar rules in Italy, but the Italians already had them, and in the UK they are new. Your problem, frankly, arises at the border. When you're asked by the customs guy or the guy looking at your passport, why are you coming to Italy? What are you going to do? If you are coming to Italy for business and you tell him you're coming to Italy for business, he will ask you why and what business you're going to carry out. And then you go through a process and he will decide whether or not you need a visa. And if you haven't got a visa, you can't do it. Clearly, there are also risks involved in not respecting the rules, because if you get caught not respecting the rules, it's like being caught for speeding. You know, how enforceable is it? Well, you get caught. And when you get caught, there are then there are consequences to being caught, both for you and for your business. And perhaps for the person, for the Italian counterpart as well. So I'm not sure where I fully understand the question, but I think the answer really is all of these rules are rules that are set out as a consequence of Brexit and as a consequence of the fact that free movement of people doesn't apply anymore. They are applied to people coming into the UK as they would be applied to people coming into Italy. And I think it's a difficult line to take if you are not following these rules, because the consequences are that if you do get caught and the actions taken against you, you can have a very significant consequence to yourself and to your business. I hope that gives some answer to the question.
Thank you, that's great. I think there might be just a bit of a follow-up on that, where it said, would this issue be sorted out if the employee has Italian and British citizenship? Well,
if you've got dual nationality, then clearly you as a person don't need if you're an Italian citizen, you don't need a work permit to work in Italy. I'm a British citizen. If I come to the UK, it's not that I need a work permit to work in the UK. But there is a subtle change to this, which is if I'm coming to work for a UK company. So in the example that I dealt with for some of your folks at the Chamber, a UK company sent European member state nationals to undertake work in Milan, and were surprised when it was a construction site, so they were carrying out construction work, so it's very highly sort of regulated in terms of safety and all this kind of stuff as well. And the UK company was surprised that these people who were European citizens and who had a right to live in Italy, who had a right to work in Italy, were stopped from undertaking the work on behalf of the UK company because it was a contract UK to Italy. And you looked at who was actually carrying out the work, and then you sort of scaled it down into the people. So yes, it helps you from an individual perspective that you can choose to live and work in Italy, or you can choose to live and work in the UK if you have dual nationality. But it doesn't mean that you can simply come from the UK and carry out work that you would otherwise have needed a visa for.
Great, thank you. We've had another question come in. So what would be the best route to work with Italian businesses in relation to working with them into introducing them into artificial intelligence? So Aaron, if you want to answer this one.
Sure. Well, the question is hard to answer in such theoretical terms. It obviously depends on artificial intelligence, the kind of artificial intelligence solution you're providing, if it's catering to banks and financial services, or it's catering to small, medium-sized companies or schools. Obviously, that's going to make a big difference. Like I said in my brief introduction, it is a relationship-based economy, if you will. So having proven abilities to provide your service to companies or individuals that are known to the Italian market would probably, in my view, be the easiest way to get credibility into the Italian market. And obviously, you always have to do a first step. So probably word of mouth and personal introduction to some local companies to get your first step in would be very, very useful. So that would be my suggestion. But I'm happy to answer via email, be in contact with whoever has curiosity about this.
Can I just make a comment on that as well? It's something that I have had first direct hand experience of. I'm a lawyer in my real life, and AI is a big thing in the legal world. One of the things that I would recommend strongly to anybody especially AI, and especially thinking about it in the service industry anyway, is don't assume that in Italy things are done in the same way as they are in the UK. And the best way to deal with it is to invest the time. You can come for 90 days on the business thing without a visa. Go to Italy, speak to people in Italy, and find out really how practically the particular sector or the particular market works. And it's something that I, like I say, I've had firsthand experience of this wonderful AI system that's presented to me, and it bore no relationship to the reality of the way in which my world works in Italy. And it's not a question of language. It's a question of understanding how things work, what the expectation is, and understanding the nuances between the difference between how it's done in the UK and how it's done in Italy, which overall is probably very similar, but the nuance is very, very different. And in something like AI, that's so important.
Wonderful. Actually, Stephen, as you were speaking, I totally agree, and do not underestimate the level of modernity of Italy in the image of the Italian, old romantic Italy is still true in some small towns in Tuscany or in Sicily, but the reality of the country as a whole is a very modern one. So you will have competition locally as well. And the second thing I want to mention is Stephen has raised time and again the issue of GDPR, which will be a new issue compared to before, because now outside of the European Union, GDPR needs to be handled with care, right, Stephen?
Absolutely. It's one of the things that's lying around waiting to just bite.
Brilliant. Well, we're almost up to kind of 11 o'clock. So just any kind of final thoughts, I think, from all of you really, is to if it was a new small business looking to enter the Italian market, what would be your kind of bit of advice to them? Obviously you said Italy's open, you want to do business with the UK. Anything else that we kind of should be aware of?
Well, if I can say, in terms of, as Aaron was saying, Italy is a modern country. Although, sometimes our bureaucracy can be overwhelming. But let's say people who locally have to deal with bureaucracy know how to manage. So it's not something that should stop a business trying to trade with Italy. On the other hand, I must say UK customs are much the same. There's not much difference. I mean, sometimes you will find the same difficulties with the UK customs that you would find with the Italian customs, or maybe even worse with the French sometimes. So bureaucracy, I think, is the same everywhere. I think that Italy has a vast number of traders, importers who are well prepared, well funded, who can buy and sell products and trade with the UK. I mean, there are these barriers, but they can be overcome. It's not something that should stop any business from looking at the Italian market, which is a huge market. I mean, if you just think of number of pubs and restaurants we have all over the country, and imported drinks are always something that Italians like. So it is definitely a good chance for those who haven't so far to step in the Italian market.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry, I have bells in the background, but it's Angelus.
All the Italian feels.
I hope you can hear me. Unfortunately, I'm very close to the bells as well, so it's quite loud. My advice would be, so in terms of Italy, Italy is a very sophisticated market. We talk about startups. So if you move outside of the strict trading, it is a very sophisticated, very advanced market in terms of technology and in terms of modern ways of doing business. They like it. Italians like that part of life. They're invested in it. There are all sorts of things going on. So clearly it's a good market for somebody who's in a startup. It's a good market because the Italians, as Aaron has said earlier, the vast majority of the businesses in Italy are relatively small anyway. So there's plenty of movement, there's plenty of opportunities for smaller businesses to have more of an impact. Whereas perhaps in the UK, you would need a much bigger structure, you'd need a much bigger footprint in order to make that kind of impact. What I see and what I would say is, yes, use your 90 days, do your market research, get somebody who can explain the nuances, because quite often they're not as obvious as you'd think they would be. Things are slightly different, but they kind of look the same. And that's where you can get caught in terms of how you interact with people and how you interact with the administration. It's certainly. So find yourself a good guide. And the second is invest time personally. Italians like to do business with people they trust, and therefore it's how you present yourself and how you engender that trust and confidence with the people you're talking to. And it's not just a case of a quick phone call and away you go, which perhaps you could get away with in the UK. So there's an element of a mix of cultural issues and accepting that you're not dealing with, it's not a third world economy. It's very advanced. They're very technologically aware, and they like new things.
Thank you.
And if I can add one more thing, you are very welcome in Italy. So do come to Italy and experience the country itself. It will be a great opportunity for your business and for you personally. I think you won't be disappointed. And if there's anything that we can do to help and create a soft landing, as I said, happy to do so.
That's brilliant. Thank you again to all of you. Great insights today. And thank you to everybody who's watching. We will be sending over a follow-up email through our events team, which will also contain a very small survey. If I can ask that you can all fill it in, please. It will really help us with, support going forward. But thank you very much. And I hope you all have a great rest of the week.
Thank you.
To the Birmingham Chamber of Commerce. Thank you.
Bye-bye.